Senator John Thune, Republican, South Dakota, met with Zuckerberg yesterday, and he joins us now. Mr. Senator, what did Zuckerberg tell you?
Hey, Stuart. Good morning. Well, first off, we talked about the hearing, obviously, and the importance of him getting out ahead of this, taking it head on, and answering the questions and being transparent, being accountable. I think that's what the American people want to see. That's what the members of Congress certainly want to see in the wake of this sort of latest scandal.
What was his tone in talking to you? Was it remorseful? Was it defensive? How did he come across?
I think he gets it, Stuart. I think he understands that he needs to be. He is remorseful, obviously, and I think he fundamentally believes that Facebook missed the boat when it comes to these contracts that they had with these firms that were able to access a lot of their users' data and in some cases misuse that data. So he's taking, I think, ownership of that responsibility, that which he should. And then the question is, going forward, what will they do to protect people's user data in the future?
Well, he says that he would take some steps which would reduce the profitability of Facebook, some kind of regulation I believe he expects. Did he talk about that?
Well, I think what he has expressed is that they are open to some form of regulation. I think more than anything else, again, what most people want to see, and I don't think anybody wants to undermine the business model that has made Facebook so successful, but I think what they do want is more transparency, and they want to know, for example, when they consent to something, when they click on that user agreement, what did they meaningfully consent to? And it seems to me, at least, that people assume when they become a Facebook user that a certain amount of their information is probably out there in the public domain. But how much of it is out there? How is it being used or misused? Those are questions I don't think that most people really have come to grips with yet. And I think those are answers we need to get. And frankly, how pervasive is the problem? It started out at 300,000 users. It morphed into 50 million. Now they're saying 87 million. Are there other firms out there with whom Facebook has had business relationships that have enabled those firms or those businesses to get access to people's data and perhaps to misuse it? Those are questions we need to find out.
I expect the left, in this testimony, the left is going to be particularly upset because Facebook information was used by the Trump campaign in the election. Facebook information was also used in the 2012 re-election of President Obama. But the harsh questioning, I suspect, will come from Democrats today. What say you?
I think that there's no question about the Democrats will play that to the hilt. They want to keep that in the news as much as they can, but they have to acknowledge that in 2012, as you pointed out, these are not dissimilar circumstances. The Obama campaign very successfully used Facebook to identify their voters and to get them out on Election Day. And of course, at that time, the left thought that was a brilliant move. So I'm sure there'll be a little bit of hypocrisy in everything that gets said today at this hearing. But we want to focus again on going forward, whether it's that issue or whether it's the issue of radicalization on some of these social media platforms. Obviously there were accusations a year ago, political bias in their news aggregation service that Facebook has. There are just a lot of issues that have come to the surface now that I think require us to exercise more oversight and to get some answers and hopefully to get more accountability.
Mr. Senator, we'll be seeing you later on this afternoon. John Thune, thanks for joining us, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Stuart.
Yes, sir.